Good morning. Good morning, commissioners. Chief Grimala, Mr. Tiefenk, Madam Secretary, Mr. Inspector General, Mr. City Attorney, members of the public. Today is Tuesday, February 8th, 2022. It's 9:30 a.m. This is a special meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning, Commissioner Briggs.
Present.
Commissioner Decker.
Present.
Commissioner Bonner.
Here.
Commissioner Kalanche.
Here.
And Commissioner Sobroff.
Here.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. Also present, we have the Executive Director, the Inspector General, the City Attorney, and sitting in for the Chief of Police, we have Assistant Chief Beatrice Grimala. Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We welcome everyone attending this morning. All public comment will be heard during item 2 on the agenda. We will dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. Members of the public will have 1 minute per agenda item for a maximum of 2 minutes total. At the request of the speaker will be given 1 additional minute for general public comment for a maximum of 3 minutes total. Members of the public who participate in public comment are reminded that they can speak to any item on the agenda or a matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Police Commissioners. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board. So you are free to express your opinion on matters before the board and to generally express when you disagree with other opinions expressed. However, directing your comments to other individuals who have spoken or attacking others who have expressed their opinion shall be deemed off topic and your public comment period will be concluded. Members of the public, if you choose to participate in the public comment portion of the agenda, you can participate in this meeting in one of a number of ways outlined on your agenda. Chief Grimala, welcome to the Board of Police Commissioners. At this time, we'll turn to item 1 on the agenda, the report of the Chief of Police.
Good morning, President Briggs, Vice President Decker, to all of the commissioners, Executive Director Tiefenk, Inspector General Smith, and of course, City Attorney Carlos de la Guerra, and to the members of the public who may be phoning in or watching today's commission meeting. I'll begin the report of the Chief of Police by looking at a COVID-19 update, impacts, and vaccination information as well. So for the week of January 30th through February 5th, the new positive cases of COVID reported within the department stands at 126, 100 being sworn personnel and 26 being civilians. Employees currently off work due to a positive test stands at 277. The good news is that is 85 less than last week, which stood at 362. Looking cumulatively at our work status, those returned to duty, looking at prior week of January 29th, 2022, 4,731 employees returned to duty after suffering with COVID. Looking at our current week, again, some progress, returning to duty 4,909, which is an increase in 178 employees returning to the workplace. Turning our attention now to confirmed or self-reported COVID-19 positive tests as of February the 6th, 2022, and these are the totals since the inception of this pandemic. Overall, in the week prior, we had 5,093, and this current week, closing at February 6th, 2022, 5,186, which is an addition of 93. If we break down those numbers, sworn make up 4,102, looking at the prior week, and 4,177 currently. For the civilian ranks, 991 prior week, and the current week standing at 1,009. Looking at our overall vaccination rate for both civilian and sworn, and we're unable to break out those numbers due to the Bluestone database. Fully vaccinated for the department as a whole, 10,216, or 82.9%. Partially vaccinated stand at 65, which is 0.5%, and not vaccinated 2,049, or 16.6%. Mobile vaccination and that program as sponsored through the Office of Support Services since the project's inception. Last week, we stood at 3,690 that were vaccinated through the mobile vaccination system. And currently, we're at 3,715 for a net gain of 25. The program has been very successful thanks to the leadership of Assistant Chief Dominic Choi, Anne-Marie Sauer-Hale, Commander Vic Davalos, and the support staff at the different geographic areas. Looking at exemptions, those filed, 460 for medical, 1,831 on religious grounds, for a total of 2,291. Currently, we've lost one sworn employee terminated at a Board of Rights process, and 7 are pending a Board of Rights process. Looking at hospitalizations, unfortunately, we still have one employee who has been hospitalized since August 25th of 2021, still suffering with COVID and the after effects as well. He is showing sometimes small gains and small setbacks, but we remain confident that his internal strength, that of the family, that of the wellness unit in support of him, will continue to push him on a road to progress. With regard to effects of COVID-19 on our workforce, we have been meeting our patrol plan staffing needs and requirements as the primary delivery system of services to the city of Los Angeles. And in the cases, which have been very infrequent, where we have not met that minimum through the efforts of the chief of police, we have been able to backfill on an overtime basis for those vacancies as they occur. I'd like to move now on to significant incidents and activities occurring from February 1st to February 8th. And there will be 5 I'll be discussing. To begin with, on February 2nd, his family, the department, and the city laid to rest Officer Fernando Uriel Arroyos, who was senselessly and viciously murdered during a robbery on January the 10th. A few thank yous are in order to the members of this commission who stood strong and tall with hundreds of members of the rank and file of this department. We thank you for that support. Also, to our chaplain corps, Monsignor Frank Hicks, who from day one, from moment one upon hearing this sad and devastating news, responded to Olympic Station to provide support. To the commanding officers of Olympic area, Captain Aaron Ponce and Captain Ivan Ortiz, for the strength and support of the men and women who worked Olympic area, which was the last location of assignment for Officer Arroyos. We thank them as well. But most of all, we thank the parents of Fernando for giving this city and this department its greatest gift, the gift of their son. We will keep the Arroyos family in our thoughts and prayers, as well as Fernando's girlfriend, Angela, who also suffered during that traumatic incident and acted heroically and bravely as well. So we thank you all. Second, I'd like to discuss an officer-involved shooting which occurred in the San Fernando Valley and Foothill Division on February 1st, just after 2:00 a.m. on the 12900 block of Desmond Street. Foothill patrol officers and Foothill GED officers responded to a call for service of an assault with a deadly weapon suspect inside the residence. The suspect was identified as a relative of family members who were being threatened by the suspect, who was armed with a knife and suffering possibly with some type of under the influence impairment. The officers who responded were able to safely evacuate the family and then surrounded the house in anticipation of de-escalation. After approximately 30 minutes, however, the suspect did exit the residence armed with 2 knives. Less than lethal munitions were deployed, and unfortunately, the suspect did advance toward officers, and an officer-involved shooting occurred. The suspect was struck. He was rendered aid at the scene, transported to a local hospital where he passed away. No officers were injured. 2 knives were recovered during this incident. Force Investigation Division did respond to take on this investigation, as did representatives of the Office of the Inspector General, the District Attorney's Office, and also the Attorney General's Office under and pursuant to Assembly Bill 1506 to do their evaluation as well. This puts officer-involved shootings at 4 for 2022 versus 3 in 2021 year to date. Moving along now to some other events. There was a Spanish language forum conducted by the Chief of Police in response to the Spanish language community members who wanted to know a little bit more about the horrific tragedy that occurred in North Hollywood at the Burlington department store on December the 23rd. A bilingual interpreter was present in real time to translate speakers' information, including the Chief of Police. I also want to thank Vice President Decker for being present as information, discussion points, next steps, the capabilities of the investigative team were discussed very candidly with the community. And we will continue again to keep Valentina Orellana Peralta and her family in our thoughts and prayers as well. Moving on, as we look at the importance, the significance, and reflection for Black History Month, also on Thursday, February 2nd, the Chief of Police and many others, including members of this esteemed Board of Police Commissioners, responded to Central Area to dedicate the Central Area Roll Call Room after Robert William Stewart, one of our first African-American police officers on the LAPD, and we're going back to 1900. He was unfortunately wrongly accused of sexual assault, and despite being acquitted of that crime, the city had terminated his employment. So as we reflect back on not only internally the department's history, the city's history, in honor of Officer Stewart, he was welcomed back into the Los Angeles Police Department as a member, but also for all to remember, to know, and to reflect upon, not only in this month of February, but for years and decades to come, the Central Roll Call Room was dedicated in his honor. And we are proud to say that that was one very, very small, and I must emphasize that, step toward the huge wrong that was committed against Officer Stewart and his family. Lastly, looking at the Super Bowl and looking at our preparedness level, the department wants to thank the NFL, allied agencies, the city of Inglewood for its help and partnership in getting our preparedness up to the level that we have confidence in, taking us not only through the past days, starting February 3rd, but all the way up to and including February 13th, the big day, the Super Bowl. Also, I want to thank the bureau chiefs who have really taken the area commands upon their shoulder with ambassadorial and proactive interchange with our communities. so that people could know that we are out there. We're welcoming visitors and residents alike to share in the festivities in a peaceful manner, a productive manner, and one that can make this city proud. So we look forward to a great week, a happy week, an energetic week for the city of Los Angeles. Now I'd like to turn to crime statistics. And as we often focus on data during this period of the chief's report, there's something very important that I wanted to emphasize with an incident that occurred on February 5th. For every number, for every tally, for every matrix, each number represents a victim and their extended family and friends and loved ones, and also their continued fight in waiting for justice. On February 5th, in the East Hollywood area, I wanted to share this particularly disturbing crime with you. As a family was driving eastbound on Melrose near Manhattan Place, they got caught in what appears to be preliminarily to be a gang crossfire, just driving down the street. And a round from that exchange of gunfire struck a family's vehicle. A bullet penetrated their vehicle, and some of the fragments from striking the vehicle struck a 2-year-old boy inside that car. Thankfully, the grace of God, the child will recover. But again, it just accents the tremendous amount of random gun violence that we are still experiencing in this city and the disturbing nature of it. In January alone, 769 guns have been recovered and booked into evidence from the streets of Los Angeles, a little less than the 806 of January of 2021, but still a phenomenal number. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention this morning. Looking at year-to-date homicide numbers compared to 2022 to 2021, year-to-date, we stand at 39 victims of homicide versus 52 in 2021, a difference of 13 or a change of 25%. Again, these numbers, I caution everyone, are very early in the year. And while we hope that they are indicators of the next 10 months and change, we know that we must remain vigilant and require the community's interaction and help and support in helping us to bring these individuals responsible for these crimes to justice. As we look at victims shot, year to date, 140. Year to date in 2021, it stood at 182, a difference of 42. Again, a 23.1% change, but still some tremendous numbers. And while we appreciate that decrease, it is still not the decrease that we would like to see nonetheless. Violent crime overall, year to date, 2,752 violent crimes versus 2,738 in 2021, a difference of 14 or an increase of 0.5%. Property crimes were flat at 8,705 year to date 22 and 21. And Part 1 crimes, we are seeing a 0.1% increase year to date for 2022, 11,457 compared to 2021 at 11,443, a difference of 14 crimes. And when we want to drill down a bit and look at the Part 1 crime picture, what is driving that increase, albeit slight at this point, but significant nonetheless? 3 specific areas: robberies, motor vehicle theft, and grand theft. When we look at robberies citywide, although in this past week period, we made a very slight gain, we're still up 20.3%. And the 4 geographic areas that are driving the robbery numbers are Southeast, Central, Hollywood, and 77. When we look at motor vehicle theft, again, a very slight decrease comparing week to week this week versus last, but we're up 4.8%. And last week we're at 6.8% year to date. The 4 areas driving those numbers: Newton, Mission, Olympic, and 77. And when we talk about the impacts of motor vehicle theft, we're talking much more than property crime. We're talking, in many of these cases, these are older vehicles, and these are the point A to point B livelihood drivers for many of our Angelenos who can have now difficulty in getting to their places of work, taking children to school, et cetera. So they're very impactful. And the last area, grand theft and theft, we are up 0.7%. But last week we were down 6.1%. And the drivers in those areas are Central, Hollywood, and North Hollywood. These are a mix of retail, big box stores, and some of the local drugstores, CVS, Rite Aid, our Home Depots. The Office of Operations and the Office of Special Operations conduct regular meetings with our retailers to see how we can harden the target and how they can have a greater communicative interchange so that they can also alert each other to trends or patterns. One other area I'd like to cover is regarding persons experiencing homeless as victims of crime. And this is something that the department continues to closely watch. So as we look at homeless victims in 2 specific areas, I would just want us to keep an eye on this trend. In the area of robberies, we're up year to date 22 over 21, 13% in victims who are homeless, who are also the victims of robberies. And in the area of aggravated assaults, homeless victims who are the victims of aggravated assaults are up 8.2% over this time last year. So just wanted to share and highlight those specific areas with you. Moving on to department personnel strength, our sworn numbers deployed 9,521. Our sworn authorities, however, for fiscal year 21-22 stand at 9,706. So that puts us under deployed at 185. Of equal importance, and I must emphasize this, the civilian personnel of this department remain to be a support piece, bar none, with their expertise, standing next to us, working hard during this pandemic as well. They are also under deployed. So our current numbers are 2,686 for civilian personnel, yet our authorities for fiscal year 21-22 are 2,842, which show us under deployed at 156. Moving on to our reserve officers, we stand at 400. For our volunteers, 2,202. Cadets, 1,248. Our next academy class will start on Valentine's Day, February the 14th, and there are 41 slated so far for that academy class, 22% of those being women candidates. Fiscal year to date, academy hires, inclusive of the 41 I just mentioned, are at 431. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the great work and leadership of Captain Aaron McCraney, who continues to try to move the needle to ensure that not only is there diversity in our ranks, but that qualified candidates are encouraged and mentored through sometimes a very arduous process to just get on the Los Angeles Police Department. And I know we continue to be proud of his groundbreaking work there as well. And commissioners, President Briggs, that concludes my report for you today.
Thank you, Chief Gurmala. Commissioner Sobroff, I see you have your mic open. Do you have questions?
I do. Chief, thank you. That was a good report. I have a question that I really don't know the answer to, and I'm interested in your opinion. Based on all the new regulations, the reality of the reports of positions taken by the district attorney and others, changes in policy to the officers. Do you believe that our current numbers are being driven downward, by a lack of engaging or a lack of reporting by the public saying it isn't going to do any good? Or do you think that these numbers are really true apples to apples? And again, I don't know the answer. I'm interested in your opinion.
Thank you for your question, Commissioner Soboroff. I think that our rank and file in all 4 geographic bureaus are more engaged than ever. I think that's really a testament to the fact that their internal compass is strong. They know why they came on this job. They are dedicated to the missions of this job. They believe in the city of Los Angeles and the importance of public safety to anything that this city is hoping to accomplish. I've seen the great arrests. I've seen the great risks. I've seen the proactive work. So I by no means am I a subscriber to the belief that our officers have shut down, are working less, are less engaged. I think they have worked and continue to work heroically through a pandemic, through internal changes throughout the department, the larger communications in our society. But they are also challenged by what they see as recidivist suspects that continue to find themselves back on the streets after numerous felony arrests, especially in the area of violent crime. That is a concern because they often feel, and it's not something that is being dramatic, that they are rearresting the same people. We know that due to COVID, the criminal justice system has experienced issues with regards to jury trials, courtrooms being opened, and that accessibility. But when individuals who commit heinous acts are not seeing contemporaneous to committing those acts some type of consequence or being held accountable, we see recidivism as a true problem. I know Detective Bureau under Deputy Chief Chris Pitcher is tracking recidivism in several impactful areas. And I think that that is something that challenges our officers. It does somewhat affect their heart and soul, but it does not deter them from their responsibilities.
Thank you. And what would be your message to the public about reporting versus saying, hey, with the new rules, they're not going to get arrested anyway, or if they get arrested, they'll be out before the officer gets home at night. What's your message to the public on this?
Thank you. The strength and the success of this police department depends upon every single individual who lives, works, and travels within the city of Los Angeles, myself included. I live in the city of Los Angeles. I have my entire life. And I think that's important for me to point out because I'm also affected by what we see. But the tips, the leads, the anonymous information through WeTip, Crime Stoppers, calling the geographic areas, stopping an officer on the street, bringing things to our attention is what leads us on a road to success. The police department cannot operate in a vacuum without the community having trust in us to take those tips and leads further, to let us know where they may see a small burgeoning problem. See something, say something is not some trite, overused slogan. It applies to everything, to all crimes within this city. And we are hoping and praying that we can continue to earn the trust of every single person within this city, because that is the ingredient for us to bring justice in every crime, from a misdemeanor theft to a shooting, a homicide, or worse. We see this in South Los Angeles, the success there. We see it in Community Safety Partnership Bureau under the leadership of Deputy Chief Tingarides and her team, Captain Espinoza, Captain Whiteman. The trust that they've built has created great dividends. We've seen the reduction in crime when we have the community linked with the police department. Otherwise, it's not going to work. We're not going to see and be able to accomplish the level of safety that this city needs and deserves.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Soboroff. Are there any further questions for Chief Grimala from any of the other commissioners? Commissioner Bonner.
Yes, please. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief Grimala. I wanted to go back up to the top of the report on the COVID numbers, and two questions. One was of the, I think it was 82.9% of the fully vaxxed. Can you remind us is how the department, and I presume this definition is aligned with other city departments on the definition of fully vaxxed? Does that include boosted or 2 shots, or what does that picture look like?
It's inclusive of both. So it has to be the 2 shots of the Moderna Pfizer. It could include those who have been boosted or the 1 dose of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Okay,
so it's not necessarily 82.9% who have been who've gotten boosters in addition to the initial. Okay, got it. And then is that consistent across departments as far as you know?
Yes, as far as I know.
The other question was, if I heard it correctly, it sounded like the number of exemptions, the 2,291, I believe it was, sounded like it was about 250 more than the universe of unvaxxed. And there may be some, record keeping issues in terms of how the numbers are reconciled and so on. But just on the surface of it, it sounded like that second category of exemptions exceeded the number of unvaxxed. And I'm trying to understand, does that mean that we only expect maybe 250 more people to who have not filed for exemptions to get vaccinated, or what do I make of those numbers?
Commissioner Bonner, I don't know if there's a reconciliation issue there. I can look into it for you and get back to you. I do not have that clarification.
Yeah, just and I don't recall exactly how the rule worked, but is the window for exemptions, is that now set, or do you expect any further exemption requests to come in?
We do not expect any more exemptions to come.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Commissioner Bonner. Commissioner Calanche, do you have any questions?
Thank you. Good morning, Chief Grimala.
Good morning.
Just want to get a little bit more information about the Super Bowl. Like, what does deployment look like? Are we all set? How was this past weekend? Just a little bit more information. I know that there's a lot of folks working in the pre-planning and deployment.
Thank you very much for your question. So we've had a robust planning team for over a year under the guidance and leadership of Deputy Chief Al Labrada and his planning team. So that included ensuring that both sanctioned NFL events and non-sanctioned NFL events through the period of February 3rd through the Super Bowl are properly staffed, managed in a very proactive way and an ambassadorial way as well. So we have the overarching incident management team that is overseeing, working hand in hand with the NFL, our allied partners, getting intelligence and information from federal partners as well as the city of Inglewood, and ensuring that fixed post staffing, roving staffing along those venues is maintained each and every day, strictly credentialed as well. Yet we also know that there will be celebrations that are not sanctioned by the NFL throughout this city. And those happen in the 4 geographic bureaus. So every geographic bureau has a command post stood up, has command staff or staff officer guidance and leadership, where there's been an identification of all vulnerabilities, historically areas of concern, or information that we got that there'd be celebrations, maybe some traffic congestion, things like that. So we want to ensure that people and families, especially visitors, can come out, feel safe, moving about this city, moving about also, in a level of tourism. And tourism is a driving engine to the city of Los Angeles. So we have foot beats, we have very visible patrols during the evening hours. We have our vice units also ensuring that ABC locations are in compliance. We also take a look at the party scene, underground parties, anything related to problem locations with Airbnbs, anything that would fracture they're very fragile, positive energy that we want to maintain in the city. So when we looked at deployment pictures, we looked at, under the chief's direction, maintenance of 100% patrol plan, and then building out the IMT under Chief Labrada above and beyond that. And that also takes into account not only personnel from the Office of Operations, but from all of the offices, from Professional Standards Bureau, Office of Constitutional Policing and Policy, Special Operations as well. So you also have that large footprint. All of us are in uniform throughout this period. So if there would be a need to add additional officers out in the street, you have every detective who's in uniform as well. So while I don't want to reveal our numbers, I can assure everybody here that the numbers are extremely strong, so that we can maintain a robust primary delivery system of services, which is our bread and butter, but also build on and support the incident management team structure in a larger sphere as well. And as we look at the 13th on Super Bowl Sunday, the entire Office of Operations is on maximum deployment. So everybody pretty much from the Office of Operations will be working. And we're very proud of the fact that everybody's rallied to meet those needs. But overall, we want to assure members of the public who may be listening that we want people to be proud of the city. We want them to have a positive energy, to have fun, and to celebrate, even though it's happening in Inglewood, the LA Rams.
Thank you, Chief Kamala. It's very helpful. And I know you oversee operations, so thank you for all of your work and commitment to have a safe Super Bowl.
Thank you so much for your support, Commissioner.
Yeah. Thank you,
Thank you.
Commissioner Briggs.
Thank you, Commissioner Kalanche. Commissioner Decker?
Thank you, Commissioner Briggs. Assistant Chief Gramala, thank you for your report. And I do apologize if I'm asking a question you were already asked. I had some internet troubles, so I apologize. But I did want to focus on, given your report on this week and the Super Bowl, I wonder if you could spend a few moments on human trafficking and addressing the issues that arise, not just from a Super Bowl event, but from major events that happen in cities. Every statistic I have seen indicates that there is a correlation. And I wonder if you can briefly describe the efforts the department is taking and undertaking to address human trafficking, particularly during the next week to 10 days.
Thank you very much, Vice President Decker, for that very important question, and I'm glad to highlight it. So human trafficking is one of the most egregious crimes that continues in 2022. And the department's robust human trafficking task force could not exist without the wholehearted support of allied agencies, both local, state, and federal in nature. Unfortunately, when we have those who come with disposable income, with a party type of environment, we often see young people, male and female, who find themselves vulnerable to those who would prey upon them with regard to especially sexual acts and engaging minors as well in sexual acts. So we have the Valley Bureau, West Bureau, and South Bureau Human Trafficking Task Force that will all work with our local vice units to ensure that information that we are receiving through Crime Stoppers and WeTip is also being investigated at the local geographic level. We kind of know already hotspots that attract those who would want to prey upon our most vulnerable. So we have a concerted effort to work as a team. The Sheriff's Department, the CHP, the FBI, all work together cohesively, and every single municipal police department as well, to provide the information stream, the communication stream that is critical to this. But also, I must say, we have our nonprofit organizations that have been there to ensure that those who are being trafficked are seen as the victims of trafficking, not as in days gone by, treated as suspects, where we can rehabilitate, reclaim, and help them to get back their lives. That is all a part of this process as well. So you'll see, and you won't see, some of our presence with regard to our human trafficking efforts, because we'll have a lot of individuals out there from our vice unit in plain clothes. They will be monitoring venues. They will be looking for those telltale signs of human trafficking, again, across the board. Also, I must mention ICAC, our Internet Crimes Against Children unit. That also figures prominently in looking for information through the internet, through the web, where people may be looking for youngsters to exploit, and working proactively on those efforts as well to entrap our next generation, our youth. I hope that that provides some information.
Thank you, Chief Gramala. Very much appreciate that explanation. Commissioner Briggs?
Okay, let me start again. Commissioner
Thank
Decker,
you,
thank you, Commissioner Decker. Commissioner Decker, you asked the very question that I was going to ask. I was going to ask Chief Gramala about human trafficking around the Super Bowl, particularly given the fact that one publication in our area suggested that it's a myth that there is an increase in human trafficking around events such as the Super Bowl. Chief Gramala, can you speak to that? Is it a myth that human trafficking in this region or when we have special events like this increase? Or do we have support for the notion that there is an increase in human trafficking when people come into our city for such large events such as the Super Bowl?
Thank you, President Briggs. The increase we see in human trafficking around special events, celebratory events that take place in cities around the country, not only in Los Angeles, is not a myth. It is a reality. It is a reality that is known not only to law enforcement, but to nonprofits and non-governmental organizations who partner with us to ensure that this is just not a law enforcement-led approach. It is one that requires compassion, humanity, and emotional intelligence if we're going to not only aggressively go after these predators who may be just traveling through, or they may be those that are based here in Los Angeles. But these are not myth-based. They are based on numbers. They are based on historical information, and they are based on trends and patterns that we share and see with cities throughout the country. It's one of those horrible, shameful legacies that continues to plague not only the United States, but elsewhere, nationally and internationally as well. And these children are brought in what we call a circuit system, where they are brought sometimes from Northern California into other cities. For example, San Jose and others, we've seen this from Las Vegas, and brought into this horrific life at the ages of 11 and 12, oftentimes, and then brainwashed and mistreated and abused, belittled, and brought to a horrible core of themselves that they almost try to find their humanness again. So for anyone to dismiss human trafficking as something that is being dramatized by law enforcement or others, or does not really exist, or is not a significant issue around this event and others, is wrong.
Thank you, Chief Gramala. There being no further questions for you at this time, we'll move to public comment. Madam Secretary, can you please open the queue?
Okay, our first speaker is Philip Tabby, followed by Betty Lay.
Hello, all items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm very concerned about limiting or canceling pretext stops. This is yet another blow to public safety. How many guns are taken off our streets because of pretext stops? How many lives were saved? Pretext stops are not racist. Protecting our most vulnerable communities is the role of this department. Taking more tools away from law enforcement is a disservice to all communities. It is even listed in the department's functional objectives. Let's just call it one of LAPD's 6 commandments. And it reads, I think 130.50, movement of traffic, to facilitate the safe and expeditious movement of vehicular and pedestrian traffic. The department must enforce traffic laws. And then it continues and also reads, the department appropriately warns, cites, or arrests traffic law violators. Commissioners, ask yourself, if you're gonna stand up and do the right thing, or are you gonna just continue to play this political game? Now, in Chief Grimala's report, she did mention COVID. So speaking of political games, when will this commission stand up to the tyrannical, unlawful mandates being put forth by our city council? The data is clear and the world is standing up. Masks don't work and no one should be forced to put something in their body that they don't want to. CDC has even said recently that natural immunity is better than any vaccine. Last but not least, I want to remind everyone about soft on crime Monica Rodriguez and her major influence on scheduling and reassigning officers. This should never happen, and we have delivered several emails from the community asking why Chief Moore directed the Foothill captain to move Senior Lead Officer Cesar Contreras. The community of Foothill is not happy, and we will get louder and ready to go to the media. Deputy Chief Hamilton, I hope you're hearing this message, sir. Please do the right thing, not the political thing. Politics and public safety should never mix. I give the rest of my time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Betty Lay, followed by caller ending 4952.
Good morning, commissioners.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
Chief's report, a couple of agenda items and public comment, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay, first off, I appreciate Assistant Chief Grimala's report. I'm sure she knows that I support the Chief's LAPD. I want to show my support for agenda items 3A and B. And I need to push to not do limitations on this pretextual stops. LAPD needs the tools and resources to keep public safety in order. We need these to get the guns, drugs, criminals off the street. Of course, we also need to recall Gascon. He's a major problem in a lot of this. And I need everybody to understand that vaccinations should be the decision of the receiver or not receiver. Even though I have a different opinion than those that aren't vaccinated, they still have the right to agree or not agree. And I don't think politics should come into play when it comes to reassigning officers. That's not how this works. And no city council person should play God, okay? They need to just be defunded. They need to turn in their city cars and their city credit cards and get out of Dodge. With that, I'm hoping everybody stays safe, stay healthy, and we have a great Super Bowl. Go Rams. I yield the rest of my time.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have caller 4952, followed by Matios Cadane. Caller 4952, you're on.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hi,
Can you hear
yes.
me?
What items would you like to speak on?
Yeah, I'm going to speak on all of them.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay, this is T. Guerra with Stop LAPD Spying, and I oppose the donation of funding for $2.5 million for 20 cops to the Harvard Park and South Park Community Safety Partnership site. So if we look at what some of that particular funding is for, which again is injecting 20 cops to 2 CSP sites that were funded by the Balmer Group, we see that one reason is to stabilize advisory councils at each of these CSP sites. So we'll just spend a moment saying what those are. So first of all, the council at each site is one that LAPD is on. Further, LAPD directs who is on the council and what that council is supposed to do. And it's also suggested that these councils include a member of the Balmer Group. So if we remember, the Balmer Group is who paid for the establishment of these police sites at these parks. And now they're suggesting that they're also on the site's advisory council together with police. And the main task set to the advisory council is to create a strategic safety plan for the CSP site. And LAPD directs the council on how to do this and recommends, they say for the sake of continuity, that that plan should take the format of the LAPD's own strategic plan. So we just see this really twisted arrangement where CSP is saying, okay, we're going to invest funds in this area, but first you have to agree to form a council with your abuser, essentially, and participate in developing a plan with your abuser and attend meetings with your abuser. And this is the nature of CSP, and this is what the funding of CSP is going towards. And next, I'm just going to read from Section 6 of the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition report that was published last November called Automating Banishment. And this is from a section called Community Policing Equals Policing of Community. And this starts with a section taken from an LAPD announcement on data-informed community-focused policing, LAPD's current data-driven policing program combined with community policing. So here is that. Racial and ethnic minorities may perceive the police as lacking lawfulness and legitimacy, based in part on their interactions with the police or other influences like social media and news stories. This can lead to distrust of the police, which has serious consequences for law enforcement. Lack of trust equates to illegitimacy of police authority, which in turn leads to an inability for the police to function effectively. So that is from LAPD in 2020 regarding their data-informed community-focused policing. Now we're going to read from a section taken from the U.S. Army Counterinsurgency Field Manual in 2014. Legitimacy determines the transaction costs of political and governmental power. Low legitimacy may breed contempt on the part of the population and may require extensive prodding and incentives by the government to secure compliance of the population. High legitimacy generally invites compliance by the population and therefore requires less effort by the government to ensure compliance. An illegitimate government's only method of controlling its population is coercion, which can be resource intensive. So that's from the U.S. Army Counterinsurgency Field Manual. So the tactics of community policing are the tactics of counterinsurgency. And they
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Matios Cadane, followed by P. Miller.
Hello,
Hi, good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
all of them, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Yeah, so on Chief Gramala's comments, I just want to point out that right before they provided crime data, they described one anecdote of violence to a family that they superficially attributed to gang violence with no evidence to that point. And without quantifying that claim with any number, any real raw data, relying wholly on that one anecdote, Chief Gramala then said there's a tremendous amount of random gun violence. I also resent the notion that the police are addressing unhoused people experiencing crimes when maybe they should be tending to the fact that police are killing unhoused people en masse. And also Sobrov's completely fabricated narrative of people not calling the police because they think the police won't fervently incarcerate, harm, or kill a community member is an obvious LAPPL talking point. And I question the wisdom in having Soborov, who's so obviously out of touch with the community and frankly too stupid to understand that, deliver that claim. But this just highlights how the LAPD kind of builds up their legitimacy upon this fiction that they solve a problem or provide safety. And so this fiction is provided in part or supported in part by fear mongering, but also through community policing, as Tiff just described, which, as highlighted in Stop LAPD Spying's report released last November, automating banishment, the surveillance and policing of looted lands, we do equate with counterinsurgency. And this isn't just some academic interpretation of it. We also have testimonies from community members who lived in CSP sites. We have one from quoted in the report here from Jaime Zeledon, who says, "We were told that there was going to be a new security program that would involve LAPD. The experience I had with this program is negative. This is a discriminatory and racist program that targets people of color in housing developments. We've seen how the police take photos of them nude and put their names in their databases. It's labeling as gang members and criminals. And if you're Latino, it's worse. If you don't have documentation, the LAPD turns them over to ICE." We also see how community members view this as an extension or as a means of banishment. One community member, Daisy Vega, who also lives in a CSP site, said they need to reinforce these areas with police force. So if people that are removed happen to come back and find they would no longer qualify, the police would be there to further oppress them. These views aren't isolated. Community members know CSP sites are just a means of assenting buy-in from the community so they can more easily brutalize them. Margaret Toddy, another community member, talks about how CSP officers told me how they tried to organize a trip to a marine aquarium for the Jordan Jones children, but the parents wouldn't let their children attend. They disparaged the parents as bad or neglectful for not allowing their children to attend. I responded that it made sense considering the long history of police brutality and terrorism within Jordan Downs. But of course, the LAPD dismisses this reality and asserts their own fiction. Any lack of trust on the community's behalf is based on some community falling short and not the reality of violence that we've experienced.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have P. Miller, followed by caller ending 3146.
Yes, can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
Yes, all items.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners and Chief Moore, Assistant Chief Gurmala. Several items. I want to thank the LAPD officers and senior leads who delivered donations to so many across the city during the holidays. Hopefully, Commissioners, you were able to participate or observe in some way. The community donates at the holidays to the LAPD because officers engaging with the community know families who are in need of extra assistance, and we trust officers, and we trust that they will deliver to them accordingly. You see, community policing does work on many different levels. Chief Moore and Assistant Chief Gurmala, good work on highlighting and the aggressive approach to combat human trafficking, especially during the Super Bowl. Also support the focus and grant for internet crimes against children and its great regional interagency work throughout Southern California. Commissioners, former Chief Bratton once said policing isn't pretty, and these are two areas, human trafficking and internet crimes against children. These are two areas of policing that are very ugly. Most of the people who claim to be disenfranchised with police have no clue what real police work involves and would never be able to handle a career in law enforcement. Chief Gurmala, good to hear that there is a recidivism report in the works. We need that reality check. Citizens support improvements or productive, not progressive, productive reforms to law enforcement. However, over the past few years, political leadership has certainly failed the citizens of Los Angeles, made it less safe, and they have allowed many areas to become like a third world country. However, it's finally becoming clear to many that the behavior and rhetoric of many city leaders and the DA have failed the victims of crime and the hardworking, law-abiding citizens of Los Angeles. But it's good to know the city and county leaders have access to their own security details. So let us have the police commissioners set the policy. Let the chief lead the LAPD and let the officers do their job. And in closing, I want to publicly thank Sheriff Alex Villanueva for making sure those responsible for the murder of Officer Fernando Arroyos were turned over to the feds. It was a bold move and it was the right move. Officer Arroyos had a promising career and he and his family deserve justice. You know, just looking at his picture, he was a proud LAPD officer and we are proud and grateful for his service. Thank you. Yield my time.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have caller ending 3146, followed by Hamid Khan.
Hi.
Hi, what items would you like to speak on?
I'd like to speak on the chief report and the wordsmith, the public input, and some of the things at Burlington. Is that good?
Okay, 3 minutes.
Cool. Well, there was no use of force 16th through the 23rd of November. It was in 2021. And so one of the reasons that happened is because the no suspect pushed the LAPD over the line of criteria of why they pull the gun. So it is great that there was no categorical use of force, and that is the goal. And, if the suspect, it goes so far, then the officer has to pull the gun. And the criteria of why they pull the gun, I think, is just really blurred with a bunch of politics and people's inability to get, to addressing this issue. So that was one thing I want to talk about to address the commission. I want to say too, support for Black Lives Matter. People Black still dealing with real absurd issues with police officers when they really, haven't done anything wrong. There's enough documentation on this in video, but the suspicion rules and reasons to stop, it's pretty shady sometimes. I still think so. We'll see what the new changes bring about. You had mentioned an officer has been dealing with COVID for over a year, something like this. Now I'm going to put this out there. You can do your research. The two things that could dramatically help is nanosoma, and the other one is the mannose sugar chain, the glyconutrients. And try that stuff. So let's talk about the Super Bowl. Oh, we got to do Burlington first. Yeah, Shields. I wanted to talk about that. When you went in, there was a call that he had a gun. Well, they should have gone in with shields, right? And then if it became a hostage situation, everybody would show up with shields and the head-to-toe body armor. So if he got a call with guns, why don't they show up with the shields? Where were the shields that day? You see, if he did have a gun, this changes the dynamic. Last one on the Super Bowl. The NFL is a 501c3. It makes so much money, it could have dealt with homelessness years ago. Right. And so the land cartels and the rent and the Oaxacan people, you look at that Steve Soboroff built his condos on a Native American burial site. So maybe that's where the problem is, right next to you in the commission. Steve Soboroff dealing with the Super Bowl and all that kind of crap is hurting a lot of Native Americans. That's what I think. And it's to me, it's reprehensible to have to see somebody like that sit on the same commission with people that are the very people that he hurts and has harmed. So.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Hamid Khan, followed by caller ending 2992.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
All of them, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
So I want to start off by Gurmala's comments about see something, say something, and this promoting this constant culture of deputization of the community and turning people into snitches and informants. And we've seen the incredibly just dramatic impact of see something, say something, and the level of racial profiling that has been going on, which your own Inspector General's audit numbers have shown over and over again. And now getting information through Ring cameras, being a part of nextdoor.com. So this whole dragnet of community informants and snitches is nothing more than a license to racially profile. Then wanted to talk about this whole conversation conversation about trafficking itself. And yes, recognizing trafficking is a major, major problem that all communities are concerned about. But within that is the assault that continues to happen on sex workers. In our conversations with groups like out of Los Angeles of Sex Workers Outreach Project or the U.S. Prostitutes Collective, there's constant stories about harassment, intimidation, even physical violence, and including demanding sexual favors by law enforcement individuals who completely go down and just absolutely are using incredibly violent tactics against sex workers. And Kalanche completely just misses out and even asking about the welfare and well-being of people engaging in sex work. And then I want to go back to the CSP issue and this whole grant that is being asked for as well. And I don't know, Bonner, if you had a chance to and you should, we will mail our report, Automating Banishment, the Surveillance and Policing of Looted Land, where we very methodically just unpack community policing, which CSP is based in. I mean, community policing, a whole practice that goes back to the 1970s, and it's always been a public relations issue. We see constantly, anytime there are uprising, people are out in the street. Just going back to the 1970s, when this term started becoming more and more common, was after the violent repression of civil rights movements and the anti-war movements as well. We saw the same thing throughout those years as well. And then even in 2020, after massive millions of people were uprising on George Floyd's during that, we come back and now establish a whole bureau. And here I just want to read a passage from our report that the overall objective of community policing is embedding police deep into communities, where they recruit ambassadors and informants, collect data on neighborhood relationships, spread propaganda about their work, and offer resources that people otherwise have been denied. The basic premise of community policing is that embedding police in neighborhood relationships, as well as using them to deliver vital social services, will help people perceive police as part of the community rather than a violent force. The ultimate goal is to pacify criticism of police and secure assent for police terror, a parallel to how the U.S. military's counterinsurgency tactics serve to provide political cover for violent imperialism and occupation. And my comrade Tiff already spoke about that.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have caller ending 2992, followed by Bill.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Thank you. I would also like to acknowledge the dedication and sacrifice and flexibility of LAPD officers over the next week for planning of the upcoming Super Bowl. The divisional captains and bureaus definitely deserve kudos because they're balancing that along with handling radio calls in their divisions and having enough resources, despite not having enough resources to make it all happen. LAPD truly is a world-class department despite all the rhetoric that has gone on, and officers continue to keep Los Angeles safe as best they can despite the lawlessness that has been encouraged by District Attorney George Descon. These officers show up every day for us, the community, but many of these officers are also very stoic and proud. The truth is many of them feel defeated. Commissioners, please make the time to go on more ride-alongs and put yourself in situations where you can truly listen to the officers. A lot of their morale is still low. Some officers are leaving LAPD to other agencies outside of LA County, some even leaving the state. How bad does it have to get until political leaders realize that something needs to be done? Commissioners, the officers' emotional and mental state and quality of life should be of concern to you all. Thank you.
Okay.
Feel my time, Becky.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Bill, followed by Angel.
Good morning, all items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
I'd like to suggest that Assistant Chief Giamala's comments about the officers being more engaged may be her opinion, but it's not the actuality you see from talking to officers. I've been an LAPD volunteer for 30 years now, and talking to the officers, they are not more engaged than ever. There's a tremendous fear of speaking freely for reprisals. I think the Police Commission needs to commission an independent survey of officer morale, find out if officers are truly being engaged. Another thing she's woefully wrong on is that the public is, answering Steve Soboroff, the public is giving up. If you go on Facebook, you go on Nextdoor, you go on Instagram, you go to neighborhood council meetings, people are not reporting things because they figure nothing's going to happen. There's plenty of threads. I had my catalytic converter stolen. It's not worth calling. Somebody stole my purse out of my car. They're not going to do anything. I called the police and it took them 3 hours, 5 days, whatever to get there. Tremendous public dissatisfaction as far as response times, and people are just giving up. Also wanted to talk about the pretext stop situation. Not enforcing traffic laws is just unbelievable to me. A police officer can pull up behind a car, see that there's no license plate on it. They probably can't even see who the driver is at that point in time. So no racial bias. They want to issue a citation for no plate, but under the new rules can't do that. Under the new rules, if I drive down the street with a beer in my hand, can I get stopped? I'm not causing any public danger according to the rules of Chief Moore's draft, but I can't be stopped because I'm not endangering safety at that point in time. So think about if I had a gray Honda driving around the streets with no license plate, and I just run somebody over. Right now, if I had a plate on the car, people could say, hey, it was a hit and run. Plate was 123 ABC. Right now, no plate, gray Honda. Well, an officer can't pull over every gray Honda plate or not because he doesn't have probable cause at that point. Not having enforcement of these rules is just an amazing slippery slope to go down. Also wanted to talk about the deployment of 500 officers going downtown to patrol downtown this week when absolutely nothing is happening going on. You have the NFL experience only open to the press. But yesterday in my division, we had a arson suspect in a high wind situation setting fire to a tree. There was no officer available for 1 hour to respond to that call because they're all walking around downtown, waving to people so the press and so the politicians downtown can feel that, oh, we're doing this great job. Traffic accidents don't get responded to. Calls for code 30s are going an hour. All sorts of issues and things are not being responded to because we're sending people down to look good for the TV cameras. The deployment of 500 officers this week downtown before the event is just absurd. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Angel followed by Steve Rogers.
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
It's a sad moment in U.S. history where police are continuously shot and killed in the line of duty or off duty. Continued prayers to Fernando Arroyos's family. I support LAPD and I want safety in our city. Chief Moore's crime stats from last week, I can't pull up this week's, are alarming. Homicide is up 37%. Shots fired up 66%. Victims shot up 134%. Gang-related homicide up 83%. Carjacking up 300%. These numbers are not good. One division whose numbers are not too bad is Foothill Division. However, our councilwoman, Monica Rodriguez, thought it would be a good idea to go to Chief Moore and request, not direct, because she can't do that, but she requested that our senior lead officer of over 6 years be uprooted and replaced. The Foothill community is outraged over this political power play. I call upon the Board of Police Commissioners to investigate possible corruption between the councilwoman and Chief Moore. Since when does a member of Los Angeles City Council have that much power? This should concern everyone. Did this SLO want to move? No. Was this SLO ever written up? No. Was the community consulted? No. Was CPAB consulted? No. Was Neighborhood Watch consulted? No. Was the Neighborhood Council consulted? No. Another important question would be, since Chief Moore granted Rodriguez's request, what did he get in return from Councilwoman Rodriguez? Commissioners, please do your job and investigate if this is in any way, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Moving on to COVID, since that's always at the top of the meeting and it is on topic, CDC a few weeks ago released a study revealing that natural immunity proved stronger and offered better protection than vaccination during the Delta variant. You can look that up on the Wall Street Journal. I know the chief wants 100% vaccination within LAPD, but how about 100% herd immunity? Combination of those vaccinated and those with natural immunity. Let's be reasonable here. Last week, Chief said he would discipline officers for not wearing masks. Really? Don't you have bigger concerns such as actual crime? People are waking up. We, the people, see politicians such as Mayor Garcetti and Governor Newsom not wearing masks with Magic Johnson at the championship game in LA. These politicians are hypocrites, and we, the people, are done with being told what to do with our own health and our children. Stop punishing officers for making their own health choices. Let officers do their job and stop tying their hands before it's too late. Our city is ridden with crime. Parents, do your God-given job and raise your children right, and don't blame cops if your kids grow up to be thugs or criminals. Recall District Attorney George Gascon. Everyone, please sign the new petition. Thank you. God bless.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Steve Rogers, followed by Q.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
All of them, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
I'd like to start off by saying that the United States is a constitutional republic. We're all God's children and all lives matter. And I want to thank Chief Gamala for her excellent comprehensive report. I do want to take exception with a couple of items though. One, as the volunteer said, and I want to thank the volunteer, whoever he is, and thank all volunteers for doing what they do for community policing and the city of Los Angeles. The officers are not as proactive as they used to be. I think that anybody who goes to a roll call, and I suggest that the commissioners go to a roll call and close the door, do not have the commanding officer there of the division, do not have the supervision there, speak to the officers directly, get their stories as to what is happening. And you will learn, I think, quite a bit. Now, I think there are a lot of officers, and I agree with Chief Mello, they're doing a great job, they're doing what they can, but they're operating within a system of recidivism, which she mentioned. So I think some of the strategies that some of the officers might be using is not engaging suspects and being as proactive as the LAPD once was, because what could result from that basically are personnel complaints, and the system is not a fair system to the officers, and it could result in vilification depending on a controversial incident occurring. If you want to throw in a racial dynamic, that makes it even worse and more concerning for the officers. So I think that you have to empower the officers, speak to the officers, speak to the Los Angeles Police Protective League. They should actually have a seat at this meeting and they should be able to hear everything. I hope they're monitoring. So the crime is way up. You can see that from the numbers, since LAPD is very fond of numbers. Here's a number I keep asking for and we don't get. Can you tell us what the demographics are of the suspects from crime reports made by people who've been victimized? We keep asking for that and we don't get it. And the reason why that's important, because eventually people are going to say, well, these pretext or investigative stops have a racial disparity, which why don't we look at the demographics and find out what the reality is? And let's not divide people by race. That in itself is racist. We have to look at people as individuals, base things on individual behavior. For the COVID-19 issue, to have approximately 20% of the department that is not vaccinated, I think that's their right. You bring it up the chief brings it up every week. Those people who are filing for exemptions, they should be granted those exemptions. There are rumors out there that after the Super Bowl, they will be terminated. I hope that's not true. They really should be valued. Every officer is important. We need everyone out there. No one should lose their job for not divulging their medical status. Thank you. Be safe.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Q, followed by Jason R.
Good morning to everybody.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
I'll be speaking on all of them, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Yes, it is disheartening that we put so much money in preparation into the Super Bowl, yet we haven't been able to resolve decades of houselessness. It really breaks my heart. Secondly, we should be concerned with human trafficking. Our Black ancestors can testify to that. What is equally disheartening is the human dumping on our streets without adequate, equitable, compassionate, accessible, and real affordable housing. As it relates to guns, how can we take you guys' concerns for guns seriously when gun is part of our white supremacist culture? I've been coming to this commission since 2014. Every time police use non-lethal force, they say it did not work. So why did we pay for those non-lethal weapons or non-lethal, whatever they are, tools. As it relates to pretextual stop, I'm sick and tired of non-Black people calling this commission, telling us what's racist and what's not, when data after data shows the opposite. Black and brown bodies should not be acceptable sacrifices for the safety of a few. The racism on these calls is deafening, and it's not just data, it's our own experiences. I would like to ask some of the commissioners who are on this board, the Black commissioners, have you ever been stopped by police for no reason at all? I'll wait. Knowing what Richard Nixon did to our communities with his war on drugs and his war on crime, built a prison system, which, by the way, is basically a school to learn how to do crime, and now we're complaining about crime. Persons experiencing houseless up 22% in terms of being victims of crime. We're not talking about that. And then we sit here and we want to honor Officer Stewart. We're great at, as a society, at honoring Black people after they're gone. But when they're here, we continue to say stuff like all lives matter when we say Black lives matter because someone Black was being brutalized. We want to have law enforcement, but we don't want to have any at all. We don't want to have any somebody with so much power, organization with so much power, yet we don't want to have accountability. It makes no sense. It's a few people controlling a system that they've always controlled to oppress the few. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Jason R. followed by T.
All of them.
Okay, 3 minutes.
All right, so first let me start with the public comment period. We, the public, are supposed to be given a paltry 45 minutes to speak, but you give time week in and week out to CPAP co-chairs, on-duty, reserve, and off-duty pigs to perform their ceremonial bootlicking. You started the meeting off today with Phil Tabby and Betty Lay, who are both co-chairs of their own CPABs, who are allocated space and time to present to this commission on a regular basis. So you're telling me that that's just the luck of the draw? No, y'all curate speakers as you please. Last week, you gave 3 minutes to Larry. Excuse me, ma'am. I'm not done. Last week, you gave 3 minutes.
This
He's off
speaker is
topic.
violating the rules, sir.
Let's go to the next speaker, please.
Okay, next we have T followed by MJ King.
Hello?
Hi, what items would you like to speak on?
All of them.
3 minutes.
That last speaker was not off topic. Y'all let 3 people slam the DA on here and he's not on the agenda. Y'all need to get it straight. First of all, start my time over. Start my time over. And second of all, I want to give honor and respect to all the families impacted by police violence. You talked about recidivism. What about Grishario Mack? What about all those killed by law enforcement, over 650? And you talk about recidivism. We have armed badge holding murderers on our streets that have not been held accountable for the murder of Black and brown bodies on these streets. Grishario Mack's murderers, Ryan Lee and Martin Robles, were found out of policy, yet they're still on the job. Okay. Gramala, she talked about a Spanish interpreter when Valentina Peralta was murdered. You talked about a Spanish interpreter, and where was the de-escalation? Officer Jones went in there with guns blazing within minutes and murdered 2 people. As a result, a 14-year-old has been killed. All right. Then you talk about the crime stats, these BS crime stats, right? What about the guns that were stolen from the LAPD store that Captain John was investigated? His home was also a source of where these guns were stored, and he had like 150 guns, right? What is going on also with y'all? The 4 people have been killed in 2022, 4 people. And you talk about having a relationship with the community. You talk about de-escalation. The guy at Foothill that y'all murdered, he had a knife. You talked about de-escalation. Where was the de-escalation when you were shooting him with less than lethal weapons, right? And then you killed him. The guy was obviously experiencing a mental health crisis, and y'all go in with guns blazing every time. We need our resources for our community. Guns and police are not safety for our people. What is safety for our people is resources, but you eat up 3.8 billion a year. We don't need you on our streets. We need the resources for housing and healthcare, right? And the stats y'all keep making up, you're trying to drive up crime like the people are the problem. If we have resources in our community, we don't need police. We need alternatives, a healthy, holistic approach to how we're dealing with houselessness and mental illness.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have MJ King.
Good morning, speaking on all items.
Okay, 3 minutes.
I appreciate commissioners, your concern over human trafficking in LA. However, I'd rather hear a discussion of what resources the LAPD is deferring to. Community-based organizations support survivors of human trafficking instead of re-traumatizing and oftentimes incarcerating survivors, which happens when the unequipped police respond. This isn't a good excuse to increase police presence during times of big events like the Super Bowl. I'm also concerned about Chief Moore's interview with KTLA last week, where he attempted to revise a narrative by indicating that 14-year-old Valentina Peralta was killed as her mother tried to shield her from an attack of a person suffering from mental illness, calling it yet another episode of law enforcement being called in to stop the violence, stop the threat. This isn't reality, but another example of how police rush in and escalate violence. Daniel wasn't given any commands before killing him, and the officer was told to slow down more than a dozen times before he stole the lives of Daniel and Valentina. Then your officers failed to check on Valentina and her mother, Soledad, even as she screamed for help. This is unacceptable. And the fact that anyone can just sit there without saying anything is a complete embarrassment and lack representation of this city. As you know, between December 18th and February 1st, LAPD killed 4 young folks who appeared to be experiencing mental health crises. Jonathan Morel Nix was only 28. Enrique Ruiz Jr. was only 33. Daniel Elena Lopez Jr. was only 24. And Chief Moore acknowledged that a MET team should have been called for 22-year-old Margarito Lopez Jr. Should have. Those words are useless now. All of these young folks had their entire lives ahead of them. How could they have benefited if they had received care instead of bullets? Each of their lives senselessly stolen too soon. LAPD has no business responding to mental health calls. This is what defund the police means. Reallocate their budget into real crisis response. Valentina Peralta should still be alive. She was shot through a wall into a changing room. On item 3A, I opposed the grant for $2.5 million over 5 years, putting 20 additional cops in the Harvard Park and South Park Community Safety Partnership sites. Community policing is surveillance and infiltration, funding the salaries of cops while that money could go to the community instead. Community policing is not safety, defund CSP. Lastly, you allow speakers to speak off topic when they are supporting LAPD, but when someone acknowledges the discrepancy, you suppress their voice by turning off their microphone. Open up public comment with no restrictions.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Baba Keeley.
And Baba Keeley will be the last caller, Madam Secretary.
Okay.
And that's Baba, B-A-B-A. I want to speak on item 3A and the police, the chief's report.
Okay, 2 minutes.
Yeah, first of all, this accepting this grant in item 2A is for $2.5 million from an outside force, certainly underscores why we don't want you accepting that. Because what there's going to do is control it. We have seen what this so-called community policing program does. It is a form of surveillance. It is a form of infiltration. It is designed to work with people and then turn around and arrest those people because of suspicion or what you think is suspicion or harm us. So that is not, and it's a public relations program. It has not worked anywhere at any time. So continuing to pump it up and prop it up is not only ineffective, but it's a misuse of funds. So we reject that. And then finally, this 45 minutes that you all give us to share our public comments, first of all, it shouldn't be restrained at all. We should be able to call in and have public comments on all the items as they appear on the agenda, not when you say we should be able to have public comments. This is your way, cowardly way, to constrict public comment from those who you don't agree with. Like you cut off the last caller because you didn't agree with what they were saying, but you accept these off-brand comments from people who talk about vaccinations and all the rest. So eliminate this 45 minutes, open up the process. It is for the public. It is, you all take as much time as you want. The public ought to be given as much time as we need to be able to understand, comment, and disagree when necessary. So in that 45 minutes and reject that $2.5 million grant.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. That now ends the public comment portion of the meeting. We will now turn to item 3 on the agenda, consent agenda items. I would like item 3A held over for discussion. Do any commissioners want item 3B held over for discussion? Seeing none, I move that we approve item 3B and transmit it concurrently to the mayor and city council. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries unanimously. With respect to item 3A, can we bring up Police Administrator Tom Brennan? As well as Stella Larakis. Madam Secretary, do we know if we have Police Administrator Tom Brennan?
We are checking with his office right now.
I apologize, everyone, for the delay. Ms. Larakis, since you're on with us, can you hear me okay?
Yes, Commissioner.
Are you familiar with this grant and the program?
Yes. So I'm, good morning, Commissioners. I'm Stella Larakis. I'm the officer in charge of the grant section. And this grant is from the Department of Justice's Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services, or the COPS office, and we were awarded $2.5 million to hire 20 police officers. The purpose of the award is to increase our community policing capacity to prevent and disrupt crime and violence. So we will be using the funds to backfill 20 patrol officers that were assigned to the Community Safety Partnership sites, which are the Harvard Park and South Park areas. Although the funding is only for 3 years, we are given a 5-year grant period to allow time for recruitment and hiring. Our award, though, is restricted to funding only the base salaries of new recruits with a maximum of $125,000 per officer for the 3-year period. And that only covers 26.37% of the total cost. The remainder of the personal cost, which is approximately $7 million, will be funded by the city. So, and we have discussed this proposal with the CEO's office, and they were very supportive of our application. So the grant will pay for $1.4 million in salaries and $1 million in fringe benefits. And we are also requesting council resolution authorities for 20 police officers.
Thank you, Ms. Larakis. Can you tell me, and I just want clarification on one point. Are these actually new officers that we're bringing into the department to fill these positions, or will these be officers who we currently have in the department? We're going to reassign them, and these are funds used for that reassignment.
So these are new hires because the grant will only fund new recruits. So what this funding is for is to backfill the positions that were left by the 20 CSP officers that were assigned to Harvard Park and South Park.
So if we assume that this grant is approved, when will those new hires, 20 positions, are you going to go out and recruit them, or are you going to take them from current classes that are in the academy?
Yes, as in the past COPS grants that we have, that's what we have been doing, was just taking them from current, whatever classes we have. There is no separate recruitment for this.
Okay, thank you. Those are the questions that I had. Do any of the commissioners have any additional questions on this grant? Seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Larakis. Seeing none, I move that we approve the department's report and transmit it concurrently to the mayor and city council with regard to item 3A on the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you very much, Mr. Larakis.
Thank you.
We will now turn to item 4A on the agenda, the department's report with respect to Information Technology and General Services Committee on implementing the Zero Emission First Fleet. I believe we have Police Administrator Sandy Russell, as well as Director of Police Transport Dirk Albakken. Good morning, Ms. Russell and Mr. Albakken. How are you today?
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. Doing well.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Well, first of all, I'll take the lead role. Good morning to the commission, Chief Gramala, and the rest of the board. I am Sandra Russell. I'm the Commanding Officer of Facilities Management Division, and with me is Dirk. I'll let him introduce himself.
Dirk Albakken, Commanding Officer, Motor Transport Division.
In June 2021, the Information Technology and General Services Committee introduced a motion for city departments to respond to transitioning to a zero emission fleet. Motor Transport Division and Facilities Management Division collaborated on this project's response. We researched and prepared our department's current status and collective recommendations for transitioning to a zero emission fleet. Since 2015, our department has supported the implementation of battery electric vehicles into our fleet. Our department's fleet consists of approximately 5,200 vehicles of various types and purposes. These vehicle types are powered by diesel, gasoline, or electric batteries. Our fact sheet details the department's current status on the installation of electric chargers, deployment of our current electric vehicles, and our short, medium, and long-term goals for the department to transition to a zero-emission fleet. For the past 7 years, Facilities Management Division has worked in conjunction with the Mayor's Office, Bureau of Engineering, the Department of Water and Power, Green Lots, and the city vendors for the planning, design, installation, implementation, and support of our EV infrastructure. This collaboration has resulted in the largest concentration of chargers being installed at our Motor Transport Division's Main Street facility, as well as 1 level 3 and 3 level 2 chargers at 22 other department locations. We are currently working on the remaining 2 department geographic area stations and the Elysian Park Academy. Derek?
Yeah, and the department's fleet, as Sandy had mentioned, currently is approximately 5,200 vehicles. We currently have 203 battery electric vehicles, and our goal is to maintain that and progressively expand from it. As in the next fiscal year's budget request, we have a request for 10 additional battery electric vehicles.
Based on the fact sheet and response that we prepared, we were going to ask if the board has any questions regarding it.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions concerning the acquisition of electric vehicles or those that we currently maintain? I have one, Ms. Russell. With respect to the BMW i3s that the department currently has and maintains, what kind of mileage are you getting out of those vehicles currently, if you know?
Okay, yes, Commissioner. I'm actually going to turn that over to Dirk to respond to.
It's hard to make a comparison to gasoline mile per gallon per se. I believe the last audit we did on that was approximately 20 plus miles per gallon in comparison, if you wanted to look at it that way. It's a little bit different statistics because it's kilowatt per hour. But when we crunch the numbers and calculate it out, it's just over 20 miles per gallon.
But those BMWs, they perform specific functions, correct?
And to go back to the deployment of the battery electric vehicles, they're used for primarily administrative functions. They are not used in any type of enforcement activities or patrol activities. Those vehicles are strictly detailed to just administrative transportation.
What do you anticipate the Ford Mustangs will be used for? Again, administrative or enforcement?
Yes, administrative activities and transportation.
Thank you. Seeing no further, are there any additional questions from commissioners before I call the question? Thank you, Ms. Russell and Mr. Albach. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I move that we approve the department's report and transmit to Information Technology and General Services Committee with respect to item 4A on the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Second.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Commissioner Decker? At this time, we're going to go into closed session. We have 2 matters before the board. Thank you very much, everyone.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss agenda items 5A1 and 5A2 in accordance with Government Code 54957.
Are you there?
Even though we have a quorum present, I'll give it one more minute. Commissioner Decker has joined us. We have a quorum present. Mr. Tiefenk, can you please report out from closed session?
Yes, Mr. President. The commission has concluded its work in closed session related to item 5A1, law enforcement related injury number 011-21. The commission unanimously adopted on a 5-0 vote the chief of police recommendations, which were tactics, tactical debrief, 2 police officer 3s, and 2 police officer 2s. Non-lethal use of force in policy, 2 police officer 3s and 2 police officer 2s. Less lethal use of force in policy, 1 police officer 2. It relates to item 5A2, officer involved shooting 013-21. Commission unanimously adopted the chief of police recommendations on a 5-0 vote. Tactics, tactical debrief, 1 captain 1, 1 lieutenant 2, 1 sergeant 2, 2 police officer 3+1s, 7 police officer 3s. Drawing and exhibiting in policy, 2 police officer 3+1 and 1 police officer 3. Lethal use of force in policy, 1 police officer 3+1. That concludes the report.
Thank you, Mr. Tiefenk. At this time, there being no further business before the Board of Police Commissioners, I move that we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. See you next week. Have a good weekend. Enjoy the Super Bowl.
Everybody.